Hi, I'm Pranamya and you're watching Pages of the Globe. So the short story I'll be reading today is called Orientation by Daniel Orozco. This is a dark comical short story that takes the form of a office tour for a new employee, which is us. It is written in the second person, so we are this new employee and we are being given an orientation of work, of office, of where everything is, who to talk to, who's the boss, things like that. Things that happen in a normal orientation, and it's told in a very flat, matter of tone voice. However, as we get more and more into the story, it becomes more and more twisted, and it blends the mundane and the bizarre in very surprising ways. It invites us into a world where everyday corporate rules exist side by side with surreal and unsettling details without ever breaking this deadpan delivery. It's very funny, but it's also very disturbing, and it quickly pulls us into a strange but oddly familiar office environment. I don't want to reveal too much of the story, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the author, Daniel Orozco. But if you do not want to hear about this, that is totally okay. Just keep skipping until you see the thumbnail or like a picture that simply has the title of the short story. So, Daniel Orozco is an American writer known best for his sharp, inventive short fiction. He grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and has taught creative writing at institutions like Stanford, the University of Idaho, and the University of Wyoming. He earned an MFA from the University of Washington, and his breakout moment came when his short stories were published in top-tier literary magazines like the Best American Short Stories, Harper's Magazine, and McSweeney's. Orientation is his most famous piece, I would say, first appearing in the Seattle Review, and later gained a cult following for its originality and satirical tone. In 2011, he published his debut collection, Orientation and Other Stories, which was highly praised for its wit, experimentation, and emotional depth. It solidified his reputation as a standout voice in contemporary short fiction. Though he's only published one major book, his influence is significant on the literary world, particularly amongst writers and readers of short stories. His work is often studied for its innovative use of form and tone, and he remains a pretty big figure in modern American fiction. This short story is quickly becoming one of my favorites I have ever read. It's so interesting, and I can't wait to get to it. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next. Orientation by Daniel Orozco. Those are the offices and these are the cubicles. That's my cubicle there. And this is your cubicle. This is your phone. Never answer your phone. Let the voicemail system answer it. This is your voicemail system manual. There are no personal phone calls allowed. We do, however, allow for emergencies. If you must make an emergency phone call, ask your supervisor first. If you can't find your supervisor, ask Philip Spears, who sits over there. He'll check with Clarissa Nix, who sits over there. If you make a phone call without asking, you may be let go. These are your in and out boxes. All the forms in your inbox must be logged in by the date shown in the upper left-hand corner, initialed by you in the upper right-hand corner, and distributed to the processing analyst whose name is numerically coded in the lower left-hand corner. The lower right-hand corner is left blank. Here is your processing analyst numerical code index, and here's your form's processing procedure manual. You must pace your work. What do I mean? I'm glad you asked that. We pace our work according to the 8-hour workday. If you have 12 hours of work in your inbox, for example, you must compress that work into the 8-hour day. If you have 1 hour of work in your inbox, you must expand that work to fill the 8-hour day. That was a good question. Feel free to ask questions. Ask too many questions, however, and you may be let go. That is our receptionist. She's a temp. We go through receptionists here. They quit with alarming frequency. Be polite and civil to the temps. Learn their names and invite them to lunch occasionally, but don't get too close to them, as it only makes it more difficult when they leave. And they always leave, you can be sure of that. The men's room is over here. The women's room is over here. John LaFontaine, who sits over there, uses the women's room occasionally. He says it's accidental. We know better, but we let it pass. John LaFontaine is harmless. His forays into the forbidden territory of the women's room simply a benign thrill, a faint blip on the dull flat line of his life. Russell Nash, who sits in the cubicle to your left, is in love with Amanda Pierce, who sits in the cubicle to your right. They ride the same bus together after work. For Amanda Pierce, it's just a tedious bus ride made less tedious by the idle nattering of Russell Nash. But for Russell Nash, it is the highlight of his day. It is the highlight of his life. Russell Nash has put on 40 pounds and grows fatter with each passing month, nibbling on chips and cookies while peeking glumly over the partitions at Amanda Pierce, and gorging himself at home on cold pizza with ice cream while watching adult videos on TV. Amanda Pierce, in the cubicle to your right, has a 6-year-old son named Jamie who is autistic. Her cubicle is plastered from top to bottom with the boys' crayon artwork, sheet after sheet of precisely drawn concentric circles and ellipses in black and yellow. She rotates them every Friday. Be sure to comment on them. Amanda Pierce, who tolerates Russell Nash, is in love with Albert Bosch, whose office is over there. Albert Bosch, who only dimly registers Amanda Pierce's existence, has eyes only for Ellie Tapper, who sits over there. Ellie Tapper, who hates Albert Bosch, would walk through fire for Curtis Lance, but Curtis Lance hates Ellie Tapper. Isn't the world a funny place? Not in the ha-ha sense, of course. Anika Bloom sits in that cubicle. Last year, while reviewing quarterly reports in a meeting with Barry Hacker, Anika Bloom's left palm began to bleed. She fell into a trance, stared into her hand, and told Barry Hacker when and how his wife would die. We laughed it off. She was, after all, a new employee. But Barry Hacker's wife is dead. So unless you want to know exactly when and how you'll die, never talk to Anika Bloom. Colin Heavey sits in that cubicle over there. He was new once, just like you. We warned him about Anika Bloom, but at last year's Christmas potluck, he felt sorry for her when he saw that no one was talking to her. Colin Heavey brought her a drink. He hasn't been himself since. Colin Heavey is doomed. There is nothing he can do about it, and we are powerless to help him. Stay away from Colin Heavey. Never give any of your work to him. If he asks you to do something, tell him you have to check with me. If he asks again, tell him I haven't gotten back to you. This is the fire exit. There are several on this floor, and they are marked accordingly. We have a floor evacuation review every 3 months and an escape route quiz once a month. We have our biannual fire drill twice a year and our annual earthquake drill once a year. These are precautions only. These things never happen. For your information, we have a comprehensive health plan. Any catastrophic illnesses or any unforeseen tragedy is completely covered. All dependents are completely covered. Larry Bagdikin, who sits over there, has 6 daughters. If anything were to happen to any of his girls, or to all of them, if all 6 were to simultaneously fall victim to illness or injury, stricken with a hideous degenerative muscle disease or some rare toxic blood disorder, sprayed with a semi-atomic gunfire while on a class field trip, or attacked in their bunk beds by some prowling nocturnal lunatic, if any of this were to pass, Larry's girls would all be taken care of. Larry Bagdikin would not have to pay 1 dime. He would have nothing to worry about. We also have this generous vacation and sick leave policy. We have an excellent disability insurance plan. We have a stable and profitable pension fund. We get group discounts for the symphony and block seating at the ballpark. We get commuter ticket books for the bridge. We have direct deposit. We are all members of Costco. This is our kitchenette, and this is our Mr. Coffee. We have a coffee pool, in which we each pay $2 a week for coffee, filtered sugar, and Coffee Mate. If you prefer Cremora or half and half to Coffee Mate, there's a special pool for $3 a week. If you prefer sweet and low to sugar, there's a special pool for $2.50 a week. We do not do decaf. You are allowed to join the coffee pool of your choice, but you are not allowed to touch the Mr. Coffee. This is the microwave oven. You are allowed to heat food in the microwave oven. You are not, however, allowed to cook food in the microwave oven. We get 1 hour for lunch. We also get 1 15-minute break in the morning and 1 15-minute break in the afternoon. Always take your break. If you skip a break, it's gone forever. For your information, your break is a privilege, not a right. If you abuse the break policy, we are authorized to rescind your breaks. Lunch, however, is a right, not a privilege. If you abuse the lunch policy, our hands will be tied and we will be forced to look the other way. We will not enjoy that. This is your refrigerator. You may put your lunch in it. Barry Hacker, who sits over there, steals food from this refrigerator. His petty theft is an outlet for his grief. Last New Year's Eve, while kissing his wife, a blood vessel burst in her brain. Barry Hacker's wife was 2 months pregnant at the time and lingered in a coma for half a year before dying. It was a tragic loss for Barry Hacker. He hasn't been himself since. Barry Hacker's wife was a beautiful woman. She was also completely covered. Barry Hacker did not have to pay one dime. But his dead wife haunts him. She haunts all of us. We have seen her reflected in the monitors of our computers moving past our cubicles. We have seen the dim shadow of her face in our photocopies. She pencils herself in the receptionist's appointment book with the notation, "To see Barry Hacker." She has left messages in the receptionist's voicemail box, messages garbled by the electronic chirrups and buzzes in the phone line, her voice echoing from an immense distance within the ambient hum. But the voice is hers, and meet the voice, beneath the tidal whoosh of static and hiss, the gurgling and crying of a baby can be heard. In any case, if you bring lunch, put a little something extra in the bag for Barry Hacker. We have 4 Barrys in this office. Isn't that a coincidence? This is Matthew Payne's office. He is our unit manager and his door is always closed. We have never seen him and you will never see him, but he is there, you can be sure of that. He is all around us. This is a custodian's closet. You have no business in the custodian's closet. And this is our supplies cabinet. If you need supplies, see Curtis Lance. He will log you in on the supplies cabinet authorization log, then give you a supplies authorization slip. Present your pink copy of the supplies authorization slip to Ellie Tapper. She will log you in on the supplies cabinet key log, then give you the key. Because the supplies cabinet is located outside the unit manager's office, you must be very quiet. Gather your supplies quietly. The supplies cabinet is divided into 4 sections. Section 1 contains the letterhead stationery, blank paper and envelopes, memo and notepads, and so on. Section 2 here contains pens, pencils, and typewriter and printer ribbons, and the like. In Section 3, we have erasers, correction fluids, transparent tapes, glue sticks, etc. And in Section 4, we have paper clips and push pins and scissors and razor blades. And here are the spare blades for the shredder. Do not touch the shredder, which is located over there. The shredder is no concern to you. Gwendolyn Stitch sits in that office there. She is crazy about penguins and collects penguin knickknacks, penguin posters and coffee mugs and stationery, penguin stuffed animals, penguin jewelry, penguin sweaters, and t-shirts and socks. She has a pair of penguin fuzzy slippers which she wears when working late at the office. She has a tape cassette of penguin sounds which she listens to for relaxation. Her favorite colors are black and white. She has personalized license plates that read Penguin. Every morning, she passes through all the cubicles to wish each of us a good morning. She brings Danish on Wednesday for hump day morning break and donuts on Friday for TGIF afternoon break. She organizes the annual Christmas potluck and is in charge of the birthday list. Gwendolyn Stitch's door is always open to all of us. She will always lend an ear and put in a good word for you. She will always give you a hand, or the shirt off her back, or a shoulder to cry on. Because her door is always open, she hides and cries in the stall in the women's room. And John LaFontaine, who, enthralled when a woman enters, sits quietly in his stall with his knees to his chest. John LaFontaine has heard her vomiting in there. We have come upon Gwendolyn Stitch, huddled in the stairwell, shivering in the updraft, sipping a Diet Mr. Pibb and hugging her knees. She does not let any of this interfere with her work. If it interfered with her work, she might have to be let go. Kevin Howard sits in that cubicle over there. He is a serial killer, the one they call the carpet cutter, responsible for the mutilations across town. We're not supposed to know that, so do not let on. Don't worry, his compulsion inflicts itself on strangers only, and the routine established is elaborate and unwavering. The victim must be a white male, a young adult, no older than 30, heavy-set with dark hair and eyes, and the like. The victim must be chosen at random before sunset from a public place. The victim is followed home and must put on a struggle, etc. The carnage inflicted is precise. The angle and direction of the incisions, the layering of skin and the muscle tissues, the rearrangement of visceral organs, and so on. Kevin Howard does not let any of this interfere with his work. He is, in fact, our fastest typist. He types as if he were on fire. He has a secret crush on Gwendolyn Stitch and leaves a red foiled, wrapped Hershey's kiss on her desk every afternoon. But he hates Anika Bloom and keeps well away from her. In his presence, she often has uncontrollable fits of shaking and trembling. Her left palm does not stop bleeding. In any case, when Kevin Howard gets caught, act surprised. Say that I seem like a nice person, a bit of a loner perhaps, but always quiet and polite. This is the photocopier room, and this is our view. It faces southwest. West is down there, toward the water. North is back there. Because we are on the 17th floor, we are afforded a magnificent view. Isn't it beautiful? It overlooks the park, where the tops of the trees are. You can see a segment of the bay between those two buildings over there. You can see the sunset in the gap between the two buildings over there. You can see this building reflected in the glass panels of that building across the way. There, that's you waving. And look there! There's Anika Bloom in the kitchenette waving back. Enjoy this view while photocopying. If you have problems with the photocopier, see Russell Nash. If you have any questions, ask your supervisor. If you can't find your supervisor, ask Philip Spears. He sits over there. He'll check with Clarissa Nix. She sits over there. If you can't find them, feel free to ask me. That's my cubicle. I sit in there. The end. Alright, so that was Orientation by Daniel Orozco. Now, this short story is it's like a darkly humorous and subtly chilling satire on office life and bureaucracy. At first glance, this story seems like a very simple workplace orientation, but it quickly turns into a layered commentary on social norms, alienation, and the human capacity to compartmentalize horror with the mundane. This story is, first of all, written entirely in the second person, which casts the reader as essentially a new employee who's joining. This immersive device draws the reader into the scene and creates a disconcerting intimacy with the narrator's voice. The structure mirrors the form of real workplace orientation. There's a guided tour that's being filled with facts about office culture, rules, and coworkers. But the author kind of warps this format by gradually inserting disturbing and absurd, tragic details into what begins as banal chatter. Right at the beginning, we simply, when he talks about the phone and he says, "This is your phone, never answer your phone," I think such lines like that automatically set the tone for the story because, yes, it's almost humorous in delivery, but it's very unsettling in implication. This very matter-of-fact tone makes bizarre revelations. We see affairs, we're seeing stalkers, we're seeing dead bodies, serial killers. But the way they say it, it's disturbingly normal. So what are some themes we see here? Well, first of all, I would say the biggest one is bureaucracy and dehumanization. This story is obviously kind of mocking how corporate environments flatten individuality and reduce human experience to procedure. Even in these shocking personal tragedies, these his wife died, she did something in her brain burst, no one talks to this person probably has an eating disorder, things like that. They're all being shared as if they are HR bullet points. It just feels very matter of fact and very formal. Another theme there is alienation and surveillance. So the new employee, so us or you, is never actually allowed to react. You're expected to just absorb everything without question or emotion, and this mirrors how many people learn to suppress their emotional responses in professional settings. This imposed silence kind of shows this very big cultural norm that feelings and ethics are subordinated to are subordinate to conformity and routine. Also, the narrator, he kind of talks about how everything is being watched. Employees monitor each other's behavior, whether you are going over your lunch break or you're touching the shredder, like whatever you're doing, it's like very, you are being watched at all times. Also, what I think is so interesting is um, Orozco kind of does this thing called absurdity of normalcy. So the story very much blurs the line between what is normal and what is absurd. So the fact that someone in the office is a serial killer is stated with the same casualness as someone occasionally steals other people's food from the refrigerator. This equivalence, I guess, which is more of a math term, but this equivalence is like very satirical, and it's like satirizes how corporate environments can normalize the irrational, treating all issues, no matter how trivial or extreme they are, with the same bureaucratic indifference. What this very much reminds me of is like equality almost. When people talk about equality and they're always like, oh, well, everyone must be at the same level, but then someone else will almost always bring up the point, okay, well, what if this person is at a disadvantage already? Like, you have to give them a little bit more of a boost. And then it turns into a topic of like, what is true equality, what is not equality. But I would say oftentimes, especially in the workplace, all issues are always going to be treated the exact same in the name of equality. Now, what are some of these characters? Each coworker mentioned becomes a very like a miniature study in loneliness, madness, or routine. First of all, we obviously have the narrator, who is the unseen employee who is giving us the orientation. They have a very flat, deadpan, like emotionless tone. They represent sort of like the voice of corporate systems. They're very polite on the surface. They have their manners, but at the end of the day, they're very cold and desensitized. They're never named. They insist on rules, procedures, and indirect communication. And it shows how, like, human concerns are often buried underneath company protocol. Something that I found so interesting that I'm sure many of you guys picked up on is when this person is talking about, like, serious medical tragedies that happened, they are saying them as if they are like examples to show that the health insurance that this company offers is very good. And at one point, they're talking about someone, and they're like, "Oh, he has 6 daughters." I'm pretty sure they're talking about Larry Bagdigan, and he has 6 daughters, and he's only mentioned to emphasize the company's excellent health plan. And it's this very like cold, logical demonstration about how even tragedy can be bureaucratized. The company would cover essentially everything, but the actual human loss of 6 daughters is being ignored here, which is so insane to me. We also learn about this like weird love chain. We have Russell Nash, who is in love with Amanda Pierce, and he is like gaining weight. He is retreating into junk food and adult videos. He is like this quiet. He represents quiet desperation and like emotional unfulfillment within the workplace. He's very passive. He's lonely. He's powerless. Um, then we have Amanda Pierce, who is not in love with Russell at all. She's in love with Albert Bosch, and she also has a son who is this like autistic kid, and her presence is like she is I feel like that stereotypical like single mom that is working really hard, like quietly enduring everything. Her son's artwork, she like posts them up everywhere. She routinely will like put new ones up. So it's like it almost symbolizes like her motivation, her structure, coping through her routine. Then we have Albert, who is the one that Amanda loves, but he loves Ellie Tapper. And so he's another piece of the link. We have Ellie Tapper, who likes Curtis Lance, who does not like Ellie at all. She is continuing this cycle of like emotional misalignment. Then you have Curtis Lance, who he's just like also some random guy. He doesn't really do much. Then we have Anika Bloom, which this is like where when she is first mentioned, it's very awkward, or it's not awkward. It's just strange because it's like she has a supernatural trait, and her palm bleeds, and she can predict how someone will die. And her effect, well, she causes fear, she causes trauma with like Colin Heavey, and she isolates people. She is like this mystic and cursed figure, and she maybe stands for like some, I'm not sure what she would stand for, perhaps like taboo knowledge in the workplace, like, you could know too much, I'm not sure. Colin, someone who was normal, but then like he ignored warnings about Nika just to be a nice person, but now he seems like mentally broken. His downfall reflects how this office kind of punishes emotional risk, because the narrator is like, don't talk to him. If he asks you to do anything, don't do it. Next, we have Barry Hacker, whose wife like tragically died. Um, However, something really weird is that his wife's ghost appears in the office, and like there's baby sounds in the voicemails. This to me was very strange. And that kind of connected me back to the very beginning of the story when the narrator's talking about receptionists, and they say that, oh, well, we go through receptionists here like very quickly. They're quitting with alarming frequency, and they always leave. Like, it's kind of weird. At first, this sounds like just standard workplace turnover, like temps are getting treated poorly, so they leave. But I will say, as soon as I read that, I was like, that's kind of weird, because so far in the story, we've like, it's been very basic. Because this was mentioned very early on. So far in this, so far in the story, I just talked about like, this is how your system, this is what your setup is going to look like. So it's like, why are you going through receptionist so fast? It seems like a very boring standard company. And then, as I was reading about Barry Hacker, I was like, maybe it's because Barry Hacker's ghost haunted wife is leaving messages in the receptionist's voicemail box. And so obviously they're going to be creeped out because they're literally being haunted and the ghost is actively using their phone. So I would assume that, these temp workers, people say that don't get too close with them. It could be because they're exposed to the office's most like haunted system, right? Um, who else? Who are like other important characters? We have Gwendolyn Stitch. She is like she seems like a very she is like that stereotypical like corporate positive girl who's like, oh my god, everyone, like she's organizing the potluck. However, she cries in the bathroom stairs and um or bathroom stalls and stairwells, and I am assuming she has some type of eating disorder because she throws up and she drinks like diet Mr. Pibbs, and like however, that's all ignored because she's staying productive. She is this amazing person. The narrator literally says she will give you like the shirt off her back. However, everyone knows she's suffering and they don't really do anything about it. Then we have John LaFontaine, who occasionally uses the women's restroom by accident. He is like that kind of standard office creep that is being tolerated as long as it doesn't cause disruption. Then we like swerve into genuine craziness with Kevin Howard, who is like the serial killer. He also has a crush on Gwendolyn, and he's avoiding Anika, who like has seizures every time he sees them. He represents like the extreme of how genuine terrible people can just still thrive in a corporate setting as long as they perform well. No one is saying anything, just like toxic coworkers in real life. I mean, I think it really reminded me that like everyone around you has their own story, has their own things that they're going through. And you never really know what anyone is because in your life, you're the main character. Everyone else is just side characters. But in Kevin Howard's life, everyone else is like literally just like victims to him. You also have Matthew Payne, who is like the unit manager who's literally never present. He is like the corporate power that controls everything without being visible. And then we just have like these bureaucratic middle people. You're told to ask them if you can't reach a supervisor. With like Philip Spears and Clarissa Nix. This is just like the office runaround, like the endless loop of non-answers and hierarchical layers. Because you can't just do this, like you have to, there's like a specific person you have to ask, and then if you can't ask that person, you have to find these people. It's like very confusing, and it's like just a loop. It seems like seemingly useless. So This story, I would say, is so, so, so interesting to me. I've never read anything like it. I would say it starts off very focused. You're just talking about, like, this is your voicemail system, this is your in and out box. But you honestly start to realize something's off very quickly. Even when he talks about, I want to end off this analysis by talking about when he talks about pacing work. The narrator talks about pacing work, and they say, if you have 12 hours of work, you have to work quickly and get it through in 8 hours. If you have 1 hour, expand, expand, expand. And it's like, if you have 12 hours of work, do you really think you can fit that into 8? No. And if you have 1 hour of work, let's just finish the 1 hour in 1 hour. Like, shouldn't we focus on being productive and, like, being a little bit more efficient? Maybe think outside of the box here. Let's, if we finish our work, maybe we could work on something else. But no, there's a very set system of how we do stuff. You don't want to do too much, you don't want to do too little. And that is very important in this workplace. And I think it's like such a good example of just simply how I would say your individuality or anything special about yourself will very quickly just be like squished. It's orientation, I would say, is not just about office culture, it's very sharp. It's a very surreal, like, mediation on how humans adapt to institutions that rob our lives of its emotional depth. We see this through humor, through horror, and like the author essentially is forcing us to consider how easily we normalize this like dysfunction and how disconnected people can become in environments that prioritize routine over compassion. That is it for today. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.